I want to talk today about accountability. The Bible says that Joash and really Jehoiada enacted some processes of great financial accountability for the nation. But accountability goes way beyond just finances. Find out more today.
Welcome to Everyday Truth with Kurt Skelly. We believe the Bible is true and relevant to everyone, everywhere, every day. If today's conversation is a help to you, take a moment to leave a review or share it with a friend. Thanks for listening. Now, let's join Kurt for today's episode.
Hey friends, welcome back. Got a lot of ground to cover today, so we're going to jump right in to 2 Samuel. Here we go. 2 Kings. You would think I would know what book of the Bible we're in by now. 2 Kings chapter 12. And we talked a bit about just transparency and accountability last episode. Today, I want to follow up on the rest of that story. Remember, what was happening was Joash recognized that the temple was in disrepair and needed to be repaired. And he was allowing the priests to collect the money individually. And for whatever reason, the money just was not translating into getting to workers to repair the breaches in the house of God. So something was fishy. Was it embezzlement? Was it just poor management? We don't know. The Bible doesn't explicitly say, but the process itself was wrong. And I've seen that in so many institutions. That happens in individual personal budgets, that happens in churches. So important to have what we call proper internal controls when it comes to the collection of money, the counting of money, the distribution of money, the overall oversight of offerings, really. This is a great template. And watch what happens in verse number 6 of chapter 12. But it was so that in the 23rd year of King Jehoash, the priests had not repaired the breaches in the house of the Lord. So all of this process, all of these collections, and there are no results. So what's happening? Obviously, you can't get different results doing the same things. That's insanity when it comes to process. So Jehoash wisely determines to have a different process with a different level of accountability. Watch what happens in verse number 7. Then King Jehoash called for Jehoiada the priest. Remember, that's kind of his adopted foster father. And the other priests, and said unto them, Why repair ye not the breaches of the house? Now therefore receive no more money of your acquaintance, but deliver it for the breaches of the house. And the priest consented to receive no more money of the people, neither to repair the breaches of the house. That's just a fancy way of saying, guys, something's wrong here, and we're going to change the way that we're receiving money. And it's interesting because Joash actually calls his foster father, the high priest Jehoiada, and the other priests. And just because he has a relationship with somebody doesn't mean that he is not going to embrace his responsibility as the leader to make sure that this is done properly. I'm sure he did it respectfully, but he still had to do it nonetheless. And it says in verse 9, But Jehoiada the priest took a chest and bored a hole in the lid of it and set it beside the altar. And on the right side as one cometh into the house of the Lord. And the priest that kept the door put therein all the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. So Jehoiada, a good man, a godly man, has just essentially been rebuked by the king. The king hasn't really offered a solution to this problem of money mismanagement, but Jehoiada has a pure heart. And Jehoiada has a really innovative solution. The solution is, instead of every priest being responsible for collecting money from the people he knows and the people in his neighborhood, so to speak, he says, let's do this. And he puts a huge chest right at the entry of the house of God. So you can't miss it. It's very obvious. On the right side, he puts a hole in it so that you can put things in, but you really can't reach in and take things out. It's a secure offering receptacle. And he tells the priests, okay, here's our new system. It's public. It's accessible. It is the same for everybody. What a great idea. In fact, this is the passage of scripture where we kind of get our concept of having an offering box at church. And it says here in verse 10, and it was so when they saw that there was much money in the chest. So all of a sudden, the priests aren't spending money on their private things. There's a higher level of accountability. And all of a sudden, we've got all kinds of money. And it says, when they saw that there was much money in the chest, that the king's scribe and the high priest came up. So interesting. So Jehoiada comes to collect the money, but he doesn't do it by himself. He does it with somebody else. Why? Because we understand this today. Internal controls in any institution would demand that no one person should count the money by himself. That's an unfair temptation. And there's no way to validate that this person has not absconded with some of the proceeds. So there are two people, the scribe and the high priest. They came up, they put up in bags and told the money that was found in the house of the Lord. So they counted it. They said, here's the amount that was collected. And they gave the money, being told or being counted, into the hands of them that did the work, that had the oversight of the house of the Lord, and they laid it out to the carpenters and the builders that wrought upon the house of the Lord. See the process? The process is there was an accountable collection. There was an accountable accounting of the money, counting the money. There was an accountable distribution. They gave it to overseers that were responsible. And then money went right to the projects. People saw things getting done with the money that they gave. This whole process is so different than the secretive process that had been employed all those years before, where nothing was happening. All of a sudden, same people, same giving, but all of a sudden there's money. All of a sudden there's accountability, and all of a sudden things are getting done. Verse 12, to the masons, the hewers of stone, to buy timber, hewed stone to repair the breaches of the house of the Lord, for all that was laid out for the house to repair it. So what are they doing? They're taking all of this money and they're using it for the exact purpose that was advertised. So what was the purpose that was advertised? We are going to repair the breaches of the house of the Lord. So these would be foundational holes. These would be structural compromises. We're going to take care of this. Now that's what the original intention was. That's what the communicated intention was. And now they're using the money, carefully collected, accurately counted, properly distributed for the exact purpose that they said they would use it for. This is faithful stewardship. Every church ought to study this passage when it comes to having proper internal controls for the way that you collect, the way that you count, and the way that you disperse resources. Verse 13, howbeit there were not made for the house of the Lord bowls of silver, snuffers, those that would snuff out the fire, basins, trumpets, vessels of gold, vessels of silver, of the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. So what it's saying is enough money came in for the project, which was to repair the structural damage, the breaches in the walls, all of those important things. But there wasn't enough money to buy all of the accoutrements, all of the nice decorative things. And I think there's a principle there as well. That is, in all of life, we start with what is essential. We start with what is structural. We start with what is imperative. And then we work our way out to what is maybe decorative. And you think about how we treat the human body sometimes. Sometimes what people do is they're more concerned about cosmetics. They're more concerned about looking good than they are about things like proper cardiovascular health, or exercise, or proper diet. So in all of life, whether it be our physical body, whether it be the church, whether it be a physical structure, the most important thing is the inside, the structure, the foundation first, and then those decorative elements if there's enough time, energy, and money. Verse number 14, but they gave that to the workmen and repaired therewith the house of the Lord. Now, really quickly, because we don't have a whole lot of time, and I want to finish the chapter, verse 15, moreover. So in addition to this, they reckoned not with the men into whose hands they delivered the money to be bestowed on workmen, for they dealt faithfully. So as this process unfolds, there's more and more trust that's built with the workers. Why? Because they see the work getting done. So they don't have to hold them to this nth degree level of accountability, because over time, trust has been developed and they don't have to follow through on everything. They have a trusting working relationship. We would say today, they're making deals on a handshake. Verse 16, the trespass money and the sin money, that just refers to the kinds of offerings that would accompany these gifts, was not brought into the house of the Lord. It was the priests. What's important about this verse is that what Jehoiada did not do is he didn't misallocate money that was intended to go to the priests themselves. So in God's system, God had allocated that certain monies for certain offerings were for the purpose of the priests and their livelihood and their own needs and so forth. So what Jehoiada didn't do is he didn't just take all the money and say, okay, I'm going to use all this money for building projects. He didn't say that. What he said is the money that is allocated by law to pay for the priest's salary, we're going to cover them. We're not going to take money and misappropriate it. If it's been designated to one thing, we're not going to use it for another thing. And I think there's, again, a very wise financial principle there for churches. Then Hazael, the king of Syria, went up and fought against Gath. We would say Gat is what they would say. That's where Goliath was from. And they took it, and Gath was a very formidable city on the southwestern side of Judah. It's where the Philistines were. And Hazael set his face to go up to Jerusalem. And Joash, king of Judah, took all the hallowed things, all the sacred things that Jehoshaphat and Joram and Ahaziah, his fathers, kings of Judah, had dedicated, and his own hallowed things, all the gold that was found in the treasures of the house of the Lord and in the king's house, and he sent it to Hazael, king of Syria, and he went away from Jerusalem. So now here's Joash at the end of his life. Syria has come and threatened them, has taken over a strategic city right on their border. And instead of trusting God, instead of honoring God, all of this money and all these fine things that money has purchased, they take them, even things dedicated to God, and they send it as a bribe to Hazael. So instead of trusting God, they're kind of bribing with God's stuff, Hazael. And it says in verse 19, and the rest of the acts of Joash, all that he did, are they not written in the books of the Chronicles of the Kings? Now, very sadly, his servants arose and made a conspiracy and they assassinated Joash in the house of Milo, which goeth down to Selah, for Jazakar, the son of Shimeath, and Jehozabad, the son of Shomer, his servants, smote him, and he died. They buried him with his fathers in the city of David, and Amaziah, his son, reigned in his stead. Now, here's the part you don't know, because you have to look at the parallel passages in 2 Chronicles. But Joash lived a conflicted life. He served God all the days that his foster father, the high priest, Jehoiada, was alive. But when Jehoiada died, we talked about this, Joash's faith really kind of became evident that his faith was not a real faith, it was a borrowed faith. In fact, he rejected God at that point, no longer followed the Lord, and even put to death Jehoiada's biological son, Zechariah, who was also a prophet, that told Joash, you're doing wrong. And he had him executed. How sad. It's really the tale of two lives, and how sadly his life ends in assassination when he's just a young man. He's just a young man, all because Joash started well. He had the appearance of going well, but boy, when it all came down to it, he just wasn't real. How sad. We'll leave it there for today. I'll see you next time on the next episode. Have a great day in the Lord. God bless you, my friends.